Hi everyone, no major news today, so let's get straight into the data. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and hit the bell to help out the channel. Starting off with Fear and Greed Index, you can see it stepped up a little bit here today. I think that's from the rally on Friday. It says last updated today, but I think this really lags by a day or so. And you can see we did see a slight step down on price, still extreme greed pretty much across the board except for breadth, and obviously volatility still hovering in these same levels that we've been in for a while. Did see a slight step up there, but bonds still hovering in extreme greed, so very little changes on this metric. Moving over to seasonality, you can see we were expecting a dip here today. We'll see if we get that little bit of a rebound into the Tuesday session. And then after that, pretty much now until the 8th or potentially the 15th, we're expecting weakness. And then from that week forward, then we should see a little bit of bullishness into the end of March. In terms of days, you can see today expected to be bearish, but tomorrow expected to be bullish, and then more bearishness on the Friday session, and then some more bullishness to come going into that options expiration. Moving over to the economic calendar, pretty much nothing here today. We do have a Fed member that spoke, didn't really hear much about that. And then looking at tomorrow, we have global services PMI expected to be above the 50 line, US non-manufacturing PMI also expected to be quite good. Bunch of Fed speakers in the afternoon, that could be interesting, as well as non-manufacturing prices, continuing to watch that. And then moving over to Wednesday, don't forget we have Jerome Powell talking to Congress at 10 o'clock. That could be interesting. You also have ADP non-farms. This is an employment week, so you got that at 8:15. JOLTS report at 10 o'clock as well, right as he starts talking. So Wednesday morning could be a little bit volatile. And then moving over to Thursday, you have the ECB interest rate decision, probably a non-event. And then you got initial jobless claims that stepped up a little bit recently. Fed Powell speaking again here at 10 o'clock for Thursday, and then that should wrap up the Thursday, and then we'll hit the rest of this calendar tomorrow. Moving over to the max pain charts, you can see for Friday there are a ton of puts in the market. Put call ratio extremely high here at 3.7 for the SPY, and this has shifted pretty dramatically from the Monday session. Max pain up around 509 now, so that's only $1 or so lower from current prices. 508 is a massive put wall, 509 also a pretty strong put wall. Top of the puts much higher now, 516, 517. I don't think we're going to get a close that strong, but it does seem possible at this point. And with so many puts in the market, it just seems unlikely that we're going to see a move lower. So keep that in mind. We did see some weakness at the end of today's session, but for the end of the week, it does seem like we're going to see a stronger finish. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps here, you can see we did see a really strong wick higher. So we got all the way up to about 514 or so. The high of the day was all the way up at 514.20. And then on that last candle of the day, sold off really strong, sold off more after hours. Momentum, RSI, both weak here on the shorter time frames. 509.77 is my level of support. You also have the 55 EMA on the hourly chart, 509.56. And then going back to the daily chart, here you can see it was a bearish day, 0.11 to the downside, and like I said, selling off after hours. 9 EMA at 507.22. Momentum still bullish, RSI pulling back a little bit, so nothing changing on the medium time frame, just looks like a short-term pullback. We've seen many of these, and this actually does look like a very similar setup here from 9 February into the Monday of 12 February. We ended up seeing a really big move down on that Tuesday session, so keep that in mind. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to happen, but that setup does look eerily similar. Moving over here to the Tasty charts, it seems like you guys like to see this a little bit more, so let's talk about it here on the daily chart. You can see we are riding that third ATR band. That resistance is 514.70, and we did get extremely close to that level and then sold off, so acting as resistance. And on this chart, I have the 8 EMA, which is sitting at 508, so that's interesting as well. And then the middle of this ATR range is sitting at 501.68. That's typically where you start to see some support. You can see we hit this ATR band, pulled to the middle of the range, held that level, ended up rallying to the top of the range, and then you can see these previous pullbacks, middle of the range, right in that 21 EMA area, which is a pretty good surrogate. Those are very similar in terms of price right now, and you can see they are exactly on top of each other, right in that same area. So 21 EMA, 8 EMA, and then that third ATR band acting as resistance. Moving over to the NASDAQ, a little bit different thesis here. You can see we did not make a new wick high, did not take out that high from the Friday session. High of day was 446.04, and the high of day on Friday was 446.58, so didn't quite get there. And then you can see that last candle of the day, same setup, sold off strong, selling off after hours. That trend was holding up. I was watching it pretty closely. We did test it on the 12 o'clock candle, ended up seeing a bounce, and then we broke through it on that last candle of the day with strong volume, bearish momentum, bearish RSI. So short time frames showing a little bit of weakness. Longer time frames, no changes here. Still bullish momentum, still bullish RSI. Clear divergence. You can see we are at a much higher level in terms of price versus this previous peak here from 9 February. Much higher RSI. And now we have a lower RSI with higher prices. And both of those are lower RSI reads from this previous peak at the end of January. So definitely some divergence taking place. And it has taken a long time to fruition, but eventually it will. We've seen this before where it kind of hangs out in here for a while. Eventually it does sell off. Moving over to the NASDAQ chart, not quite the same. We have not been hitting that third ATR band the way that the SPY is. We've been pulling back to the 8, which held on this previous test, rallied up, made a new high. So the structure is still intact in terms of making higher highs and higher lows. And you can see on the volume weighted MACD, the NASDAQ is moving back into more bullish territory. So could absolutely see a test of that third ATR band, which is sitting at 450.23. That would give you about 1.5% of more upside. But you can see that bearish day, 8 EMA sitting at 439.18, and then 21 EMA sitting in that 433.50 area, right in the middle of the range for these ATRs. So a couple of different levels to work with here on this chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, these did not do a whole lot of much on the day. The Russell tried to break that level at 206.50, got all the way up to 207.77, and then it quickly rejected back below that level. So still sitting just below that 206.50 level. If it closes above it, then you can start trading up to 208. But right now, 206.50 is the level, and you can see we're actually down a little bit more after hours. Let's look at that on the hourly chart here. You can see attempted breakout, didn't quite get there, broke down on the last candle of the day. Did close below it on the 9 o'clock candle as well, but quickly reversed. And then you can see hit that 9 EMA as resistance on the down move on the hourly chart. So that's your current resistance. You got the 55 holding at 204.70 right now. We'll see if that holds just ahead of my level at 204.62, which is my current support level anyway. So momentum massively bearish, RSI very bearish on the shorter time frames. Structure still intact. We'll see if this holds up here at that 55. And then the Dow still trading in the same range it's been in for about 7 days at this point. Momentum slightly bearish, RSI neutral. Moving over to the MAG7 chart, quite a different thesis. It was positive on the day just by a little bit, and it is up a little bit after hours. NVIDIA was rallying through the roof as it has been doing for a while, and even with that, you can see this chart did not move very much at all. It's still holding above that trend, which it did break above on Friday, so it's still holding up through a big wick up to a high of 356.02, and then quickly pulled back to finish very little changed. Momentum bullish, RSI still super overbought, waiting to see what happens. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple breaking down massive. This is the weekly chart, just so you can see the open of the week. Gap down huge, sold off. We talked about this 179.69 level being absolutely critical. Let's jump to the daily chart. You can see we broke below that level on the Friday session, and then it broke way down on the day, 2.54%. Big sell-off for Apple. Next level of support would be 170.90. We've been talking about this selling coming through for a while. Now it's coming to fruition. Thought it was going to break, and it is going now. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, 170.90. So that's about another $4 of downside potential. And then realistically, 165.71 is within range. That's the low here from the end of October timeframe. So keep that in mind. Did find a little bit of a bounce here at these lows from mid-September, but I would expect that to break. And then looking at Tesla, you can see it had a terrible day as well. 7.16%. Momentum moving towards bearish. RSI breaking down. They had some news about weakness in the auto market in China. Probably could have seen that coming. BYD's been on a roll in China. Tesla not in favor. And as that news broke, Tesla broke down massive. So 197.75 broke. It did close below 188.50, and it is down more after hours. So 177.70 is that next support. If you wanted to trade this short down to that level, that might be a good opportunity. It is right there. It's back below all the EMAs and SMAs. And this structure has looked quite bearish for a while. If it does break that level, then we'll start to look for these trend tests. Potentially 152.43 within range, certainly possible. Tesla looking much weaker today on the back of that news. Moving over to AMD and NVIDIA, these have been on a run, both of them positive on the day. And you can see it here, AMD 1.34, NVIDIA 3.6. Resistance for NVIDIA up at 886.65. It seems like that's where we're headed. It is up even more after hours, so NVIDIA continuing its massive run. AMD, similar thesis here. Gapped through that level, through a big wick. High of day was 211.01. Ended up closing down at 205.36, so there was a little bit of weakness there, but remember, it's still all-time highs for NVIDIA, still bullish momentum, still bullish RSI, everything still looks strong. Could just be a little bit of short-term weakness, still holding that trend support at 204.88 would be the next one, so everything still looks good here in the semi space. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, staples continuing to hold in the same range. It's below the trend line, but still holding well above 74. Momentum has faded almost to zero. RSI is still hovering and slightly bullish. And then discretionaries getting destroyed here today on the back of Tesla's move. Not what you would want to see, momentum stepping down. And that is after finally touching our level here, 185.36. Touched that level on Friday, gap down and sold here today. It is right on top of the 9 EMA at 182.38. It's just a couple of cents above that. Certainly possible it could hold, but I wouldn't expect it to off the back of that move. We have seen moves kind of similar to this. We had one here on Wednesday, the 20th of December. It did hold up for a little bit on that 9 EMA, and then once that broke on Thursday, the 28th, then we had a much bigger sell-off straight down for 4 more days. So keep that in mind. Could bounce here, hold, and then sell off big. But right now, this looks significantly weaker coming off of that resistance level. Moving over to industrials and utilities, some of the strongest sectors on the day. Industrials continue to break higher. This has been a colossal run, and it continues even higher. Broke the trend on Friday, continued higher here today. Down just 10 cents after hours, nothing convincing. So looks very, very strong here, continuing to go higher. Resistance would be up around 125. Certainly seems in range. It's only $4 higher from here. And then looking at utilities, very powerful day. It had a weekday on Friday. Gap down, hit the 21, hit VWAP, bounced from that level, held 61.43. And then on the day, gap down, touched that level again, and then rocketed higher right through the next one. Got the 200 SMA sitting at 63.05. But this looks very powerful. Momentum bullish, RSI continuing to go higher. The volume on Friday was a little bit concerning, but the move here today definitely reassuring. And this has been holding in this area for a while. You can see held this bottom, higher low, another higher low. This looks strong up to that 64.20 level in my opinion. Moving over to breadth, interestingly, this continues its run to the upside, which is quite odd considering the down moves that we saw across most of the major markets. So 20-day average still pushing towards that 86.50, 50-day still pushing to that 55 EMA at 74.60. Behind that, I have a level at 77.46. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish on both of these. So breadth is widening as markets sold off a little bit here today. Pretty interesting. So keep that in mind going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to yields, you can see yields did catch a bid here today. So they sold off really powerfully on Friday. 2-year didn't really hit anything interesting in terms of levels, but it did bounce here. It is back above the 21 EMA. It's holding above that now, which is currently sitting at 459. We'll see if that level holds. Could be a little bit of consolidation here between 450 and that 200 SMA sitting at 475. We'll see how that plays out. And then the 10-year bouncing off of that 200 SMA on the daily chart. 418 is that level, bounced a little bit, hit the 21 EMA, didn't get above any levels of notice. Momentum bearish, RSI kind of neutral here, but slightly bearish. So we'll see how that plays out. Yields catching a little bit of a bounce, but this still looks weak to me. Moving over to the dollar here just for a moment. Did not do much of anything today. Down very little here, 0.05 on the day. Touch that 200 SMA again. We'll see if that holds. That's currently sitting at 103.73. Level for me, 103.64. So still hovering in the same range. Not doing anything convincing yet. Still waiting to get some clear direction. Moving over to bonds, you can see J&K doing nothing. Still in the same range it's been in for months at this point. TLT, on the other hand, had a really strong day Friday, like we saw on yields going much lower. Inside candle, tried to make up some of that ground, but couldn't quite do it. So we'll see what happens now. We're still at the highly traded zone. That is 93.80. We'll see what happens with that. Still looking for a test of that 200 SMA at 94.94. Momentum bullish, RSI still bullish. Moving over to volatility, move index gapped higher and rallied. Saw a little bit of a bounce there. Momentum going higher, makes sense. And then looking at the VIX, similarly gapped higher and held. Momentum rolling back towards bullish, RSI ticking higher. This is definitely a little bit concerning. Let's go full screen with that here on the daily chart. So big sell-off, tested the trend, broke below it just for a moment, gapped higher, held above the 55, currently at 1344, and that momentum indicator also quite bearish. You can see momentum maxed out, got to roll down. We'll see if that follows through. Can take a while for that to happen, but this is interesting with that step towards bullish on this indicator for the VIX, which is bearish for markets. So keep that in mind. Could just be a little bit of a nothing. It's happened before, similar to this, where we gapped higher and then sold off. Had a move higher here on the 28th as well, so could be nothing, but something to pay attention to. Moving over to my accounts, I managed to make a little bit of money on the day. I held all of my positions, and then I rolled them out to the next iteration for the IWM and the Qs. So again, 206 on the call for $1.27. It's basically the same exact position that I had going into the day. Then we closed below 206, so I got just about a max profit on that position, and then rolled it out here. And it's down a little bit more after hours, so I might actually roll that down to 205 tomorrow. We'll see how it's looking in tomorrow's session. And then for the Qs, I ended up rolling down one strike to 433 at the end of the session. And that ended up working out. You can see we're down at 443 now, just a couple of cents higher. So we've sold off more after hours, and that's for a $1.73 credit. So pretty decent on that credit. And you can see I also did not put back on that put that I had going into the day. I took a small profit on that put as it started to show weakness, and it was a good call because markets ended up going lower on the day, and I did not reestablish that position as markets looked weaker. So might look for an opportunity in that tomorrow if markets show strength, but right now they're definitely not. And then TQQQs holding all these same positions. Slight loser on the put, still making some money on the call. 61 is the break point on that strike, but I still have $3 credit here, so that would put me down to 58 on that put. We'll see how that plays out. A little bit of weakness across markets. We'll see if it rebounds tomorrow like it's supposed to with seasonality. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the charts. Are we going to see more selling tomorrow, or will we get a slight jump on that seasonality chart? And then mid-March, will we see sell-offs, or can NVIDIA continue to prop up markets? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.